life for me in segregated Alabama wasn't bad. In 40s and 50s, I attended a Rosenwald school, whereas the principal came out front every morning and ring the bell, and we would gather and sing, lift every voice and sing, God bless America and salute the flag. And I'm meeting so many other people who had the same experiences in other towns. Home life was beautiful. We lived in a three-room house, not a three-bedroom. And we had so much fun. We had our own talent shows. We did a lot of things that were fun to us and learning. My mother was a maid, and my father worked at Republic Steel. And I wasn't hungry. I wasn't sad. We went to church. My daddy didn't. This is unique about my family. My father didn't believe in organized church, but he was one of the most giving, kind persons I've ever met. But my mother and my grandmother, now, they believed you had to go to church. Now, my grandmother, who was a teacher in it was either Barbara or Scotia in Anniston, Alabama. The Ku Klux burned the school down 3 times. So the Presbyterian women who were teaching my grandmother moved it to Concord. That's why you had Barbara Scotia. Part of it came from Alabama, and the other part was in Concord, North Carolina. Remember, Mary Bacall Bethune and a lot of women of old graduated from Barbara Scotia because it was an all-female college. So my grandmother in Alabama, who was very sophisticated, she wanted everything to go away. In those days, teachers had to be really strict. My grandmother was, but we learned a lot from her. And she set up a feeling of, you got to make it. Nobody can turn you down. Nobody can do this and other. Now, my mother being a maid, there was a lot of advantages I realized, because we knew how to set tables. We knew how to prepare good, healthy meals. My mother would bring us food home from their houses. The same thing that she prepared for them, she prepared for us. Therefore, we really, to me, had a good life. I was not sad. And I knew there was some badness and sadness going on in the world, but you would be surprised to know how Joe Louis motivated us, how we sat around the radio. We listened to ball games. We had our good time in Gadsden, Alabama, and I'm a witness. So,
what attributes did your parents have that prepared you for the world that you entered during such a turbulent time?
Mostly giving and sharing. Relatives lived with us no matter how small the house. We were able to take people in, and they became just family to us. And this is something all of us still sort of share. All my sisters and brothers, we welcome people in. We love each other, we love other people. Because at our house there was always laughter and fun. We had some sad times now. Don't think we didn't, but we didn't let them occupy most of our time. We were always taught, you fall down, but you get up and you survive. And I think that those survival skills have been with me and still are. And I teach my own grandchildren, never say I can't. Try. Do what you have to do. This is my mother, who was a maid. I love this picture because she had a great sense of humor. She was born in 1910 in Alabama. She had 7 sisters and brothers. And this is my grandmother's family. This is my grandmother's mother and father. They were the Westbrooks out of Oxford, Alabama. So those are my grandparents and my great-grandparents. And this is my grandfather and my grandmother, Emmanuel Strickland, who was a Pullman porter and a follower of A. Philip Randolph, and my grandmother, Laura Strickland. Now, my grandfather was a very giving and sharing person and was a Presbyterian. And he wanted me to come to North Carolina to college. But he told me, I'm going to send you to college, but you got to send all those other children your mom and daddy got to college. You're going to have to help them. And I didn't think about it seriously because I wanted to learn and I wanted to go to college so badly. I really said, okay, Granddaddy, I'll do it. And I went to Johnson C. Smith University. Now, there was this one relative wanted me to go to Barbara Scotia because it didn't have any boys. Ha ha ha. When I found out Johnson C. Smith had boys and girls, and they had just started letting girls in the 40s, that's where I went. I loved every minute of it. Right. Enjoyed it. And it was through Johnson C. Smith University, about in 1958, I can't recall, 58 or 59, I was chosen along with Charles Jones and Ann Austin to go to Berea College in Kentucky. I didn't know where I was going. They said that there was a Christian organization and we were going under the leadership of the Christian. I know it was partially sponsored by the American Friends Service and also by the Quakers, because everything we got had Quaker on it or American Friends Service. And Dr. Steele and Dean Davis wrote my parents a letter and said I was going to a YMCA, a Christian camp. When we got to Berea, Kentucky, I had not ever seen Indians from India. It was right after Gandhi had a successful strike freeing the Indian people from the British. We were taught nonviolence. When we got there, we were already matched with a white person. And that was our roommate for a week. We had meetings, we had all kinds of speakers. I cannot think of all the great speakers that we were exposed to. The Underground Railroad, right out of Kentucky, a lot of the slaves went through there to get to Ohio. They waded through the water. We saw where they hid. It was a fantastic experience. But most of all, I learned how to control myself and how to control a crowd. We were taught, people don't tell this often, but in the South, you will see people who were protesting during those days doing like this, because the mean spirits, you know when I say mean spirits, you know what I mean. They would actually take their billy stick and hit women across their breast. Then, if you see the professional men who march all the time, they're padded between their legs, because if you see some of the pictures in the background, one man is holding a black man's leg and another man is holding the other one, and they're beating him between his legs. But see, the men were padded, and every move that was done during the civil rights movement had a purpose, and people don't always explain those purposes. We held hands not only out of love and joy and sticking together. It was to protect each other and our bodies, and if one go down, the other could go down with them. Another one of the ploys, if you will read the civil rights information from the 60s, you will see up north, they burned their houses down, they burned their stores, they looted. Down south, we didn't do that. Because during the time of my training, we were taught, don't destroy your own. We weren't going to destroy, even if it didn't belong to us, we had to have some place to live. So if you compare northern protests with southern protests, you will see there's major difference. Because most of us who were in that, we were protesting, we actually knew how to control. Now, as a student at Johnson C. Smith, nobody was in jail. We didn't get put in jail. We were peaceful. We dressed up every day and went downtown and marched. Now, I was working in the bookstore with Miss Malone sometimes, and there were a lot of fellows who had just come back from Vietnam, I believe. No, it was Korean War. And I said, you know, I would say, you gonna protest? They say, yep. I said, would you fight? Yep. I've been over in Korea fighting, so if one of them, you know, what's hit me, I'm hitting them back. And if they call me a nigger, I'm going to fight them. Well, you can't go downtown. We cannot let you go downtown today. The guys were wonderful. The veterans were. Some of them had cars, but they drove. You know, we really went between classes. We were so organized that we went between classes, well-dressed, walked quietly, no silliness. I mean, we were very sincere in what we were doing. So were the other college students all over the South. And we really we learned how to protest from those Indian professors who had been with Gandhi. And this was in the Kentucky Hills. I cannot recall the exact year, but it was in between 58 and 59, I believe. It might have been earlier. But we went to Berea College to get this training. And I'm still calm. Very little can shake me to the point that I have to become a fusion and explore.
What were some of the derogatory things said and done to you during your experiences of standing up for equality?
Some of the things I think were, the usual. Nigger, they call you a nigger gal. And those, I cannot recall a lot because I don't dwell on negatives. And there were, now I'm from Alabama, so there were some things said, but it didn't hold me back. I've had a good life, and I enjoy my life, and I might be sour for a minute or two, but I gotta go. I gotta keep moving, okay.
Did your family give you any pushback for wanting to join the movement?
My parents really did not know that I was involved as I was. After my father gave me permission to go to that Christian camp out in Kentucky. But I didn't understand completely what I was involved in. And when I came back to campus, I did not tell what it was. I told you there were three of us. We didn't know what we were involved in. There was so much protesting already going on in the world, and we did not know what a big involvement we were getting involved in. But I was always involved. No matter where I go, I am involved. And my parents have seen it and my sisters and brothers just learned of a lot of my involvement. They are shocked. Just in the past 20 years, they learned a lot that I was involved in during those days.
What was going through your mind when people were getting arrested and killed during the civil rights movement across the country?
Sad. I was so sad and wondering what was going to happen to the world. After graduation, I got married to a classmate, and we moved to New York. And we had 3 children in New York during the 60s. And each time I had a baby, there was protests going on in New York. People were burning down in Watts. People were burning down in Detroit. People were burning down and being burned. It was so sad. The Panthers were becoming more popular. And I wondered what was going to happen to the world that my children were born into. So it bothered me a lot during the 60s.
What moment do you remember most during the civil rights movement?
I remember mostly Watts burning. My youngest son, Wayne, was born, and I was in the hospital, and I saw Watts burning. And my heart just went out to those children and parents and fire and looting. And I was thinking, why can't they be calm? Why are they doing it to their own neighborhood? And why the police in California, just like the police in Alabama, I thought they were different. Well, hey, no, they were police. So that was that. I think that bothered me the most. And Emmett Till's murder, that worried me a lot. During that time, I had a lot to worry about, and I did.
Earlier, you were telling me about the juke joint in Alabama. Can you go back and talk about that juke joint in Alabama at that time?
One of the funnest things that happened in Alabama, into my life. My cousin Ann owned a rib shack, and it was Ann's Rib Shack, and her husband's name was Euless. He was a veteran. He was funny and she was funny. They had a jukebox in there, and you could go in there anytime you want to, day or night, put a nickel in the jukebox and dance. Well, we weren't allowed there that much, but we loved Ann's ribs and her cooking. And every time we got a chance, we went to Ann's Ribs. And I'm so glad my children got a chance to experience it, to go into Ann's Rib House. But that's one of the funniest things fun things in our lives. And every Sunday, my family went to my grandmother's house after church and had dinner. And my grandmother used to call my father an infidel. I said earlier that my father did not believe in organized religion. And we didn't understand why. He just did not want preachers in his house and eating definitely before his children. And I asked my Aunt Mamie years later, why did Daddy have that attitude? She said, because Mama and Aunt Hattie and those, every Sunday, every Friday and Saturday, we had to clean the chickens, go on the farm, pick cotton, pick corn for the preachers on Sunday. And the preachers in that area came to our house to eat because we had a big house. And we had to eat last. And if wasn't nothing left, we just bad luck because they worship preachers. She said, that's why your daddy don't like preachers and doesn't like. I dressed it up and called it organized religion. But Daddy would say, no preacher eats before my children. So, and Daddy called the girls sweetheart, darling. He called us pet names all the time. If he called your name, you better wake up. He would say, baby, don't do that, baby. Now think about that. Now my mother would put the whammy to the hammer. She was something to behold. But she was good, and I never remember them working. My mother worked until she died. She was 80. She was still going to those people's houses. But she enjoyed it, and they ended up enjoying her because they left her pretty well, pretty well.
What did the resiliency of you and your peers say about people of color during the Civil Rights Movement?
My peers and I used the popular language the other people were using. You know, they were calling us niggas. We learned the word honky. That's the only one I can remember. When we had a workshop in Kentucky and we had to face a white person, they had to call us a name and we had to call them a name that would be probably make you angry. Do you know, I could not think of anything but cracker. I'm from Alabama, and I thought that was an insulting name for Caucasian. So I'm standing up there in front of this girl's face. She said nigger, and I said cracker. And she said nigger, nigger, and I said cracker, cracker. Both of us were college students, and we were supposed to be just insulting each other the way that we would be insulted on the streets. I didn't pass that test. I had to learn words that were insulting to me that I didn't know. I really never been there before to actually call people names. But those are and I never heard the word spick until I lived in New York, a speck, something, wop. I never heard all of those things that insult people. But now I know a lot of them. But I don't use them because they're not necessary. The Civil Rights Movement in Charlotte was unique to me because they had a black society and a white society. Each of those societies were exclusive to themselves. And as I observed, white people didn't like certain white people into their social lives. And black people were the same. Charlotte has I think it has been infiltrated now. Charlotte has a group of black people during that time who felt very superior because they were on the west side of town. Johnson C. Smith was over there, and many of them were educated. But the other side of town, where Second Ward was taken over and was and there were educated black people over there too, with stores and homes and great ownerships. But there was a division among the black people to me. And I felt like there was a division among white people. After I started to teach in Charlotte, I could see it was a bilateral thing. It was people being people. People feeling that they were superior to other people. All of us had some of the same characteristics. The black people had theirs and the white people had theirs, but they were similar. Now, Charlotte has been a city that tries to squelch things before they blow out of proportion. And they had a sheriff when I got there. Little John, I think was his name. It was supposed to have been a really powerful bad dude. Well, then they got sort of rid of him because after the civil rights movement in Charlotte, it was peaceful. And I want to share this too. The civil rights movement, the white people came on Smith's campus and worked with us. And they gave us money, they helped us. You don't hear people talk about that. And there was this writer in Charlotte named Harry Golden who lived down on Elizabeth Avenue. He was very pertinent to the black community. There were a lot of white people who actually helped us. I remember a lady named Mrs. Cannon who came and talked to me. Said, if any girl needs anything or let me know. And I have friends who will help. And Aunt Marge, my husband's aunt, she had a group of white and black women who worked together to help things go smoothly in Charlotte. So Charlotte has had a way of smoothing things out before they explode. And the school system had a model for other systems to integrate. I was a part of that. Now, they didn't treat us right in the beginning. They sent what they had evaluated as the best black teachers to the supposedly superior white schools. But all black teachers during that time were sincere and loved teaching and gave it all they had. So no matter where they sent the black teacher, to me, they excelled.